Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Money is emotional. It makes us feel so many ways. 2020 has brought a lot of different challenges that have created a lot of different emotions, especially around money. From people being more considerate about how they can be socially responsible with their finances, to negative feelings because of layoffs and furloughs due to COVID. Other people are suffering from what we call survivor's guilt because they've experienced financial growth in 2020. Today, I'm excited to have Lindsay Bryan-Podvin here to share all about how we can better handle our money emotions. Lindsay is a financial therapist, a speaker, a podcaster, and a Plutus-nominated author. In her practice, she uses shame-free financial therapy to help people get their minds and money in balance. Additionally, she's expanded her services to help therapists with their money mindset, niching or niching, depending on how you like to say it, and having more authentic marketing. Instead of sharing her money memoir like most of our guests do, Lindsay's going to share a little bit about what a financial therapist does, the signs that you might want to work with one, and some tips that can help you finish the year on a good note financially. It was such an honor and a privilege to do this episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think so many people are going to get so much value. Let's get to it. Lindsay, I am so excited to have you here today. So 2020 has been a crazy year. There's been so much happening for so many people. And I thought, what better way to finish December than to be talking about our mental health, but mental health as it pertains to finances. So I am excited to chat with you all things financial therapy today.
I'm so happy to be here, Lauren. I love all of your work, and I think that this is going to be a very fun and hopefully validating conversation for your listeners.
So let's just start first by talking a little bit about what a financial therapist is, because there's so many different terms out there for the different financial professionals. So I'm a certified financial planner as an example, but there are people who call themselves financial advisor, wealth manager, financial coach, financial therapist. Do you have to have any credentials or education or anything to be a financial therapist?
So the industry is working toward creating some sort of regulation around who can call them a financial therapist and who cannot. So for me, yes, I have some letters behind my name that allow me to say I'm a financial therapist. My credentials are that I'm a master's of social work. So I did 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of grad school, 4,000 clinical hours, sat for a test, all that good stuff to become a therapist. And then I also sought additional training in financial social work and in training from the Financial Therapy Association. So I'm not affiliated with or endorsing either of those programs, but those are two reputable programs. So again, it's the Financial Social Work Institute and then the Financial Therapy Association that offer certification and training. Now, some social work programs have started to include financial social work and financial therapy as different tracks and different add-ons. So I imagine in the next few years, we will start to see more people coming out who are able to call themselves financial therapists. Now, the big caveat that you mentioned, Lauren, is that coaching, on the other hand, is not a regulated industry. So I struggle because there are some amazing financial coaches out there, but as a consumer, it's hard to know who has done what training and how and why should I trust them. So there are some good financial coaches out there, but that industry is not regulated. So I do think it's worthwhile just to do some digging and see what led them to be able to call themselves a coach and what type of experience, personal and professional, that they have. But Financial therapy is really a discipline that exists at the intersection of psychology and money. So it helps people think, feel, and behave in a healthy and balanced way with their money. And in my work, because I came from a depression and anxiety background, I use a lot of the way that I look at money through that lens of helping people with depression and anxiety. So I focus a lot on financial anxiety, financial shame. Those are the types of things that I really love to do in my work.
Well, that is so helpful to get just a really good understanding of the difference between, like you said, a therapist, a coach. I've talked in multiple other episodes about what a financial planner does. And we know that 2020 has been just a crazy year for a lot of people. We've been thrown all kinds of curveballs as it pertains to what we were expecting to do versus what actually happened. Riots and protests and elections and you name it, in addition to the pandemic. It's just been a very trying year for so many people. But the thing we want to kind of focus on is, like you said, from a money standpoint, if you're struggling, what kind of things have you kind of bumped into, or what kind of things have people brought to you this year that related specifically to what's happening because of 2020, where they maybe enlisted your help?
That's a really good question. And it kind of runs the gamut. But what I saw was something interesting that I wasn't expecting, Lauren. So at the start of the pandemic, when we were having that first wave of people being laid off or being furloughed, my clients were coming to me, even if they had been laid off and furloughed, with so much gratitude. I was not expecting that. I was expecting a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. But at first, what I started to hear my clients say was, yeah, I've been laid off, or yes, I've been furloughed, but I still have my house. I still have my health. I still have my partner. I still have my dog, right? They were able to really tap into some of that resilience and some of that strength that is inherent within humankind. Now, that shifted as the pandemic went on. And as this racial justice revolution really erupted and emerged, I started to see a shift in how people were relating to and engaging with their money. One big way was that people wanted to be so much more conscientious of how they were spending and investing their money. They were being much more conscious consumers, and they wanted to make sure that where they were spending and where they were investing was in alignment, not just with their values, but with the values of social and racial justice. So I saw a bigger request for how can I vet people? How can I make sure that I'm spending money in a way that contributes to the community that I want to see? So I definitely saw a shift. Now, while that was happening, the fatigue kind of started to set in around having to have accepted a cut in your paycheck or having been furloughed. So then I started to see that as well, of people saying, oh my gosh, here it is now 4 or 5 months and I'm going on unemployment, and helping people navigate what it felt like to be on unemployment when I think most of us don't plan to go on unemployment, right? But how to navigate what work meant to them and what money meant to them when it had slowed down and flowing towards them. And then I saw a whole nother thing. So like I said, Lauren, there's so much that happened.
All the things in 2020.
All the things, I know. The last thing, and then I'll throw it back to you, I promise, is financial survivor guilt. So that was the other thing I saw start to come up, was people who hadn't lost their job or hadn't lost their income. They were going, Lindsay, I feel so bad that my neighbors, my cousin have lost their job and I haven't. And so helping them understand what that experience was like, of saying, I feel bad about having access to money or still having a job. So yeah, a bunch of different things, but in a nutshell, I would say those 4 things. So gratitude, conscious spending, financial survivor guilt. I guess it's 3, those 3.
No, those are all really interesting things to kind of deep dive on. So I guess let's start with the survivor guilt, because that's one that definitely resonates with me. I started to realize later on, my business didn't falter this year. That in fact, it grew. One of the things is that it grew because, as a woman of color, like you said, people started to get more conscientious about where they were spending their dollars, and they sought out, there we go, a financial planner that was of color. But How do you deal with this idea that there's so many people suffering so much and you're not in the midst of the suffering and maybe almost feel like you should be? What are kind of the tips that you give someone who is suffering with survivor guilt?
So first, to zoom out, survivor guilt, we often associate with trauma. And so survivor guilt is what happens when somebody experiences something that is putting them in harm's way, or they experienced a near-death experience, or they experienced something that could have harmed their livelihood. So the easiest way to think about this is getting into a car accident and you came out without a scratch. And the guilt that comes with, why was I spared? Why did I survive? What could I have done differently? Those types of questions. Now, when it comes to money, Lauren, you totally took the words out of my mouth of the way that some of my clients are talking about this, which is like, why is my business doing so well? How come I managed to keep my job this year? Oh my gosh, the stock market is going bonkers. And every time I log into my retirement account, it looks like I've made money. So survivor guilt when it comes to the financial side is feeling like, why was my income, job, net worth spared when so many others wasn't? And rather than trying to remedy that by saying, oh, actually, I'm kind of maxed out. Why don't you lay me off and you keep somebody else in the office? Rather than doing that and kind of self-sabotaging, it's much more beneficial to remind ourselves that we are not in control of what is happening outside of us. And I know that's a little woo-woo, but it's true, right? We did not, unless somebody's hiding something from me, start the coronavirus pandemic, right? We were innocent bystanders in that. And thus, we have to do the things that we can do to keep ourselves and our community safe. And that means practicing financial self-care. So if the urge is to say, I want to help, that's great. And we have to first make sure that you are financially secure enough to offer help, whether that help looks like monetary donations to charities and foundations, whether it looks like safely volunteering and dropping off meals, or it's getting cold here in Michigan, volunteering at homeless shelters. You know, there are ways to give back that don't involve you harming yourself.
I love that. Channeling that energy into something that is productive and is going to make you feel really good and not so guilty about the fact that you're doing well will help you change that mindset, because there's a lot of people that kind of sit at home or sulking or even self-sabotaging because they feel like, oh my goodness, all around me, everybody's saying like what a crappy year 2020 was or is, but it's not like that for me. So that's a great action item to be able to help us understand how to survive survivor's guilt. All right, so then let's go back to being more conscientious with your finances in general. So like you said, where people started to spend their dollars became a really important thing for some people. One of the things I've kind of talked to clients about and spent a little bit of time on is making sure that you understand your own cash flow before changing the way that you're giving. Now, if you're already, like you said, spending money somewhere, you can definitely take time and look at those different dollars and how you're spending them. But what kind of things did people kind of come to you with as it pertains to wanting to be more conscientious? And was there some sort of anger or negative feelings that people were having about the way they had been spending their dollars?
It's interesting because my clients are a diverse group. I don't just work with one group. And when I say diverse, I'm not just talking about racial diversity. They're also diverse in terms of age, gender, sexual orientation, ability to disability, et cetera. So it depended on the client, what they were bringing to me. But I would say the general theme was just a desire to be heard and a desire to understand. And so for a lot of my clients who are BIPOC, you know, Black, Indigenous, person of color, they were really looking to make sure that they were continuing to spend their dollars within other BIPOC-owned businesses. So they were double checking like, hey, rather than order from Amazon, maybe I'll order my books from the locally owned Black bookstore. Or maybe rather than getting a shipment of meals from a big box place, I will go to the farmer's market and support people within my community. And then folks who were outside of that realm were wanting to do more education. So they were spending money on coaching and consulting and courses to show up in the world as more well-informed. It was no longer acceptable just to be not a racist person. We have to actively work against racism. So a lot of people were doing their anti-racist work and spending money in that way.
And that's really cool that you bring up a diverse community and not, like you said, diversity, I've been trying to drive that point home as much as possible, that while racial diversity is kind of in the focal point of conversation and narratives, that when you talk diversity, it is all aspects of life. So, like you said, various levels of income, different cultures, all sorts of different various genders, various sexualities, and the list goes on and on and on. While racial diversity is at the forefront, I've been encouraging people to diversify your friend group, diversify your environment, diversify your workplace beyond just colors and genders, but to really look beyond what that word means and figure out how you can get a more interesting group of people around you. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. So when we think financial therapy, I know I think kind of like, oh my goodness, I'm struggling with something. And I think therapy in general, it's like, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I have some issue I need to deal with. And so I need to go see a therapist. So if we go kind of to, separate of 2020, things that kind of people might want to engage a financial therapist for, there's some sort of financial stress in my mind in the way that someone might want to reach out. What are the kind of the things that might say, like, you need a financial therapist is? Like, are there certain red flags? You're being underpaid, you're chronically in debt, except like, let me not give the examples. You tell me when you might need to engage a financial therapist.
Well, I think you did such a nice job of highlighting what a lot of people think financial therapy is, and that a lot of people still to this day think we go to therapy when something's wrong. We are starting to trend towards the direction of therapy is a healthy part of emotional and psychological self-care. And so I'm seeing more people come in both as preventative therapy, but also as maintenance and coping with everyday life. So when it comes to financial therapy, it makes sense that a lot of people would assume it's for people who are struggling financially. It's for people who can't get a raise, who are chronically in debt, who keep getting credit cards and maxing them out. And there are certain financial therapists where that is really what they focus on. My focus, and I'll come back to generally in financial therapy, my focus is really on people who struggle with financial anxiety and financial shame. For financial anxiety, it's anything that makes us feel nervous, worried, or on edge when it comes to our money. So the person might have a lot of money in their bank account and be fine on paper, but they are constantly checking their bank account to make sure they didn't lose money. They are counting every single penny, and it's really hard for them to go out and spend it. They are so worried that they made the wrong investment or that they chose the wrong job that they get stuck ruminating, right? So that's the financial anxiety side that I work with. And then the financial shame can be so layered. So for a lot of my clients, it is financial shame of maybe they out-earn their parents, and how do they sit with coming from maybe a working class or middle class background, and now they're moving up into middle or upper middle class. How do they sit with where they came from and where they are now? How can they fight back against this thought that having money makes you a bad or a greedy person? For some people, it's just embarrassment of like, wow, I'm in my 40s and I really don't know anything about money. So those are kind of the two areas that I focus on. But in general, when it comes to red flags, what I like to think of when it comes to financial therapy is a person who has done the data side or the literacy side of the financial work, and they still struggle with the emotional side. So again, they've read the books, maybe they have a financial advisor, maybe they listen to money podcasts, and they get these strategies, they get the tactics, they understand the language, and yet there's still something there in their gut that feels off or wrong when they engage with their money. And that's where a financial therapist can really come in, because they help them understand that our relationship with money starts when we are very little. Our brains are doing the bulk of their development between the ages of 0 and 7. So if we think back to what was going on between the ages of 0 and 7 and think about how that shaped our relationship with money, it helps to give us so much more context than just, I'm bad at budgeting.
I think that's so good. And I really love the point where you mentioned that it's not so much that you don't have financial literacy, because I think that's another thing that is an assumption about therapy, is that I'm financially illiterate, therefore I have this baggage, and so I need financial therapy. But you could actually be financially literate, have tons of education, done an exemplary amount of education for yourself, but still be struggling with the emotional part of thing. And that's where you would engage a therapist. And also that aspect of when you are in school or of school age, you are learning all sorts of things as you grow up, but also as you're growing up, the things that are happening in your environment are building the person that you're becoming. And those are the things that sometimes you need to unpack because they have created the financial emotions that you have. And that's where the therapist comes in and can really help you unpack those things. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So if I wanted to engage a financial therapist, what does that process generally look like? Is there like a onboarding? I tell you my whole life story. We start from the very beginning, or is it like you just come in and you say like, Lauren, what are you dealing with right now? And then we kind of start. Is there like a flow of how it works? And are you supposed to graduate? Am I supposed to have a therapist 30 years from now? Or
I love all of these questions so much because these are the types of questions that people rightfully want to know when they start in financial therapy. So for me, I like to think of financial therapy as having a graduation. And I love that you called it graduation because that's what I call it too. I'm like, look, if I do my job, you won't need me forever. Bottom line, my job is to help you understand what's going on, what's helping, what's harming when it comes to engaging with your money. So for me, yes, we do go back in time. We take a look at what was going on in your early childhood. I like to use an intersectional lens. So I also like to think about what was going on culturally, what religion were you raised in, if any, what was going on in your neighborhood growing up, what was, the era, right? So I like to look at all of those different things and how they shaped you. And then, yes, we definitely talk about the here and now. And then we start kind of taking a deeper look at some of those big interactions with money. Some of those firsts tend to be really important. Your first job, your first career, maybe a first big purchase, whether that was a car or a home. Maybe it was a big win, like paying off student loan debt. Taking a look at some of those financial milestones to get a better understanding of your relationship with money, and then bringing it into the here and now. So the way that I do financial therapy is I imagine most of my clients who seek me out for financial therapy, we will meet weekly for about 4 to 6 months, which I know sounds long, but if anybody listening has gone to therapy, which I imagine you have, because 1 in 5 of us struggles with mental stressors at some point in our life, traditional therapy can be really nebulous, right? If you call a traditional therapist and you say, hey, how long can I expect to work with you? You're going to get a response that sounds like it depends, which is true, but it's also really frustrating as a consumer who's trying to get some help to know, am I going to see you 3 times or am I going to see you 300 times? Like I need some sort of guideline. So I tend to say my clients I will see for about 4 to 6 months, knowing that each person, each couple is different. But in general, we are working on 1, 2, 3 things. I'm not diagnosing or treating depression. I'm not diagnosing or treating any other mental illness. I'm just working with them on their relationship with money. So it's laser focused on that. And of course, I incorporate my lens of traditional therapy into it, but it's much shorter.
Got it. Is this something that you feel like everybody needs financial therapy, or are there times where someone kind of comes through the door feeling like they need a financial therapist and you're like, oh, you're actually in pretty good shape. You might just need a financial planner.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. It's so funny you asked that. I have a podcast as well, and this season is all about therapists and money. So I had on several therapists yesterday, these 2 therapists that have a business together. And every answer to their question, Lauren, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are so good at money. And when I say good at money, I also meant the emotional side of it, the psychological side of it. And I was like, these are people who really don't need financial therapy. Like they get it. They were so intentional about their money. They were so mindful about money. They were so kind to themselves if they made financial mistakes. So no, not everybody needs financial therapy. Some people do just need the strategy and the tactics that a financial planner can offer. But some people do need financial therapy. So no, it's not a blanket statement that everybody needs it.
That's super helpful to know that you may not be a good fit for this, but someone should tell you if you're not a good fit for this. You can also benefit very much so from working with the financial network. Like you said, and it's not a forever thing. That was the most encouraging thing for me to hear, is that you're not broken. I think that sometimes people are hesitant to even start the process because it's like admitting that you have some sort of problem by working with a therapist. But also, like you said, if there's an indefinite kind of feeling to it, it's just like, I'm forever broken and I need to depend on you because I am so bad at doing life or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that there's a graduation at the end of it all.
Yes, yes.
So then the other thing, I mean, I guess to consider too is therapy. I know a lot of the things that's holding people back from participating in therapy in general is finances, because there's a cost to it. You have to make a living. Other financial therapists need to make a living. Is this something that's generally covered by insurance, or is this a self-pay thing? What's kind of the average that you can see as it pertains to, the high end or the low end of what the cost would be like if you're making a 6-month investment in yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's really hard. So I'll first give a straightforward answer and then I'll add some nuances. So, in general, financial therapy is not covered by insurance providers. So, you will have to plan on paying out of pocket for services. Each therapist structures their fees differently. Most therapists, myself included, tend to do a per session rate. Occasionally, I will offer packages if it seems like there's a very specific question that we can knock out in 2, 3, 4 sessions. Then I will do a package rate where they pay up front and then we know what we're getting into. But for the most part, it is a little bit more ongoing. Now, it's really frustrating because in our healthcare system, we are supposed to have what is called mental health parity. That was something that was passed underneath the Affordable Care Act, where mental health care is supposed to be seen in the eyes of insurers just as important and just as reimbursable as physical health problems. And the Affordable Care Act made a huge difference in accessibility. It increased accessibility to mental health care. But at the end of the day, so many insurance providers still put a cap on how much therapy a person can receive. So it's common in a lot of insurance providers to only pay for 12 to 20 sessions of therapy, and then the client is on their own. So it is hard, even when you're thinking about traditional therapy, about how can I get help? How can I gain access to it if your insurance doesn't cover it, or if they do, but it's time limited? So I always like to offer a couple of things. One is that graduate schools for therapy, those folks are always looking for hours. And so they often offer supervised therapy for those graduate students at a incredible discount or for free. So there's usually low cost or free services available at your local college that has a psychology, social work, or counseling program. So that's a great way to kind of look for it. And then there are also other ways that you can get mental health care. Some therapists offer sliding fee scales. Some therapists offer pro bono work. So there are ways to get healthcare and mental health care at a cost-effective way. And then I always have to plug, if you can pay for it, please do. Mental health professionals are the lowest paid mid-level healthcare providers. So it's really important that we do pay for our mental health care when we are able, because these are also folks who are, again, mid-level healthcare providers. They do just as much school as your physician's assistants and your nurse practitioners. And we have to also stand up and say mental health care is a part of our healthcare.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point about the idea of investing in yourself and finding these to be worthwhile expenses. I think so often it's hard to be like, I'm not getting a physical thing out of this. I'm not getting, a shiny car or a nice bag or whatever it is that is your thing that makes you feel like, this money felt good to spend because I have this. But those intangible things are the things that can last you a lifetime. And so while you pay to go into this room and initially you may feel worse before you feel better sort of thing, because you got to unpack some stuff, that ultimately you are making an investment in yourself to be a better person for those around you and for you. And that's worth paying for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And Lauren, for your work as well, right? It can seem counterintuitive to say, I'm struggling with money, I'm going to pay somebody to help me with it. But the reality is it's an upfront investment that pays lifelong dividends, right? If you work with Lauren, if you work with me, you start to gain skills that you can use lifelong and hopefully better your financial situation or your emotional and financial situation for the long term. So it is a short-term investment, but it's really those long-term gains.
Exactly. As a financial planner, we're always planning for the future. And I think it's important that, like you said, we're planning for all aspects of our lives to be improving in the future.
Right, right.
So as we think about wrapping up, we're wrapping up the year. What kind of tips do you have for somebody that's trying to just finish out the year on a good note?
It's really tricky because it's hard to not want to tie everything up in a neat bow. And when 2020 closes, 2021 starts and everything is fresh and clean, right? That would be really great. And that's where I've seen a lot of people get into trouble. I had a past client of mine share with me that they didn't start in therapy with me until after the new year. This was years ago, because they knew that if we started during the holidays, they thought they knew that they would get in trouble for spending because they knew they were going to spend a lot on holiday gifts and holiday travel. Like, I'm not going to start in financial therapy till afterwards.
Right.
Right? Like, but the reality is, whatever you spend in December, it's not just one and done, right? It carries over into the new year. So there is this psychological thing that happens where we think, new year, new me. And it's like, new year, same you. She's coming with you. And her spending and her saving is also coming with you. I always tell my clients, check in with what is most important to you and most important to your values and spend accordingly. When it comes to holidays in general, I challenge people to ask themselves, name 3 gifts you got last year. And it is shocking at the amount of people who are like, and maybe they come up with 1, because we often think that the gifts are defining of the winter season. And it is not true. Really, what we tend to remember a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, is what funny joke so-and-so told at the table together, having to stay the night because it was snowy out. We tend to remember the experiences. We tend to remember the things of the people who we were with. And I think that's what we're going to miss out more on this year, is those memories. And we're going to want to plug that memory hole with gifts, right? We're going to want to send somebody a gift because we can't physically be there because it's unsafe to do. So I'm encouraging people to kind of check in with themselves and take one of 2 paths when it comes to holidays, both spending and celebrating this year. One path is to try as best as you can to safely recreate the type of holiday experiences that you have had in the past, right? So I've heard of people doing things where each person in the family cooks a dish and then they divvy it up safely in Tupperware and bring like their part of the sweet potato casserole over to their cousins. And then they all eat together on Zoom. So they all get to share the same meal, even though they aren't physically sharing it in the same space. So that's one option, is to how can we best recreate past times? Or the option that myself and my partner are taking is, we're like, it was really recent, like a day or 2 ago, we were looking at places to go because we knew it wasn't safe to be around family. So we're like, okay, let's just do an Airbnb for a few days and get away. We're sitting there researching, trying to figure out where to go. And then he says to me, he says, what we're doing is we're hoping that if we travel, that COVID won't exist. And that's not true. And right when he said that, Lauren, I had this aha of like,
wow, yeah.
Right, right. I'm like, gosh, you're wise. But it was so powerful to just go, it won't be over if we travel. It won't be gone if we go to grandma's, right? It won't just be gone because it is a certain day of the year or day of the month. And so when he said that, we actually did a total 180 and we said, you know what? We are not going to try and go on vacation. We are not going to try and hunker down somewhere else and have a new point of view. We are going to totally go out of the box and just do things that we normally wouldn't do within our house and within our city that is, of course, safe to do. So we mapped out a list of like hikes we want to go on, places we want to get takeout from, movies we haven't watched yet. And so that's the other path I encourage people to take. If you can't safely recreate the holidays, then say, you know what? This one's a wash. This one's a free for all. Have fun, do what you want to do. And hopefully this time next year, we'll be in a different position to be able to celebrate in a more aligned way.
You are so brilliant.
I will credit him for that one.
Yeah, the both of you. Exactly. I mean, it's just so hard heading into the holidays, like you said, with so much information from the media and from friends and family and different perspectives and points of view. And then, like you said, I've experienced, kind of a guilt for wanting to be out and, am I a bad person because I'm actually doing this? And then, of course, you hear the narrative of you are a terrible person for this. What does it mean to be safe and how to govern yourself accordingly? Because you do want to see the people that you care about. And you do want to honor their wishes for how they best feel safe. So I think you gave us some great ideas for how to navigate the holidays, how to not use our spending as an excuse to like, F 2020, I'm over it.
Right.
So we can head into 2021 too. And I think you also brought up a really good point about how one day to the next, I always think of birthdays as that thing that's like a huge letdown. Like the next day you wake up and you're just a day older, and it's similar, the day after Christmas is the day after Christmas. The day after the new year will be, we'll have 12/31 and it'll be January 1st. And we all keep saying we're looking forward to 2021, but this pandemic doesn't look like it's on a schedule to be done in 6 weeks just to make us all happy. So we've got to really find ways to make the most of each day and not really pin it on, because of Christmas, because it's my birthday, because it's blah, 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 I get to do something different, or it's going to be something different. But today is a day. It's, the cliche is it's a gift. That's why they call it a present. And to kind of operate in that space, making the most of each day.
Yes.
This has been a lovely conversation. I am so glad that I saved you. We've been in touch for quite a while, but I think this is so timely with all that's happened. I want to we usually do this thing called the final sprint. And though we didn't cover your regular financial story, I still would like to do the final sprint with you. Are you down?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. You've got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Popcorn.
Oh, you have a popcorn addiction?
Big time. Huge. I am a popcorn connoisseur. I eat it for dinner like once a week. And I have different toppings that I like to use. I have different beverages that I like to go depending on the topping that I have. And I'm in the Midwest, right? So we're like corn country. So the next town over has like the best popcorn ever. So I'm always buying it.
Oh my goodness. This is good to know. So if you guys have questions about popcorn, make sure you hit Lindsay up.
Yes.
All right. Finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when?
You have to split the tab.
Ooh, that is always an awkward moment. This is why I need a financial therapist. It's so much easier to just like pay for it. And I tell my clients this all the time, like, don't do that. That is not in our budget. But
yes,
I'm definitely a proponent of just like, this is about to be so awkward. Let me just do it. Let me just say like, no worries. I got it. Definitely an awkward financial moment. What is your worst money habit?
Oh my gosh. Why is this so hard?
Everybody's got one, even a financial therapist.
That's really funny. My worst financial habit is actually by default, I don't like to check in on my money. So I have to set a calendar alert to make sure that I check on my money. And I was doing something that I can't believe I was doing, which is small, but it adds up over time. I was paying for Netflix twice a month, like on 2 different email accounts for a year, Lauren, and I didn't notice.
Yikes.
Yeah. So that was bad.
Automate, but not to the point of completely being unaware of what's going on. I like that. That's a good tip for people.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go on a good note. What is your best money habit?
Oh, automatically saving for vacations.
Ooh. Do you just like have it like automatically just go from one account to the next every single month?
Yep, it auto goes. And I'm so excited because I've continued to save for vacations all through 2020, even though we haven't gone anywhere. So I'm taking a bougie trip when this is all over.
I love it. I literally just had a conversation with a client about it. She's like, well, we could move this money and I'm like, but you didn't get to go anywhere this year. Yes. And she's like, well, and I'm like, but we have everything in every other bucket. We did what we were supposed to do. Like, it's okay to keep that money there and ramp it up a notch.
Yes.
I love it. Okay. Last but not least, can you share with us one thing that you would like to change about your finances in the upcoming year?
I want to increase my retirement contributions.
Ooh, what's the action item that's going to help you reach that goal?
So I automate everything. I'm self-employed, so it really doesn't take that much. I just have to log in and tweak a couple of things. So I can definitely set that reminder since I love my calendar reminders and get that going for 2021.
All right, we're holding you to it.
All right.
It has been so fun having you on. I would love for you to tell everyone how we can find you, how we can support you, what you're working on. This is your time to shine. Go for it.
All right. So my business is called Mind Money Balance, MIND. I'm most active over on Instagram at that handle, Mind Money Balance. My podcast is of the same name. My website is of the same name. And I would love to invite your audience to take a little quiz to learn more about their money archetypes. So there are 4 financial archetypes, and you can learn a little bit more about the strengths and challenges of each of those archetypes. You can get that quiz at mindmoneybalance.com/quiz.
All right. And we will add all of that to the show notes, of course. Lindsay, it has been so great having you on the show today. I look forward to chatting with you more and maybe even engaging you for your services.
Yay! Love it. Thanks so much for having me, Lauren. This was a fun conversation, and it's just a nice reminder that like the end of the year can have a lot of positivity to it as well.
Yes, we can go out with a good bang, not a bad bang. Yes. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode with Lindsay. We have discussed money mindset many times in the past. There are a lot of emotions tied up in finances, which is why it can be helpful to work with a financial therapist. As Lindsay shared, you can have all the financial knowledge in the world, but your money emotions and mindset can get in the way of you putting that knowledge into action. So I want to ask you a question today. Who do you need to help you get out of your own way? Is it a financial therapist? Is it a certified financial planner? Is it an accredited financial counselor? If you know you need help, do not be afraid to reach out to someone. Lindsay also gave some great advice about not going crazy with spending through this holiday season. So many people make the excuse that I'll get started when the new year comes around. The calendar is going to change from 2020 to 2021. And in the same way that we're expecting COVID to just magically disappear because the clock struck 12, we can't really expect that to change our reality. You're still going to be the same you, and you're still going to have the challenges that you are currently having unless you do something to address the problem. And the time to do that is now. It's not next Monday, the first of the month, or in the new year. So don't fall into the trap of blowing your budget because it's been a weird 2020. Take ownership of your financial future and begin making the steps in the right direction now. And if you're truly struggling with anxiety or shame around your finances, whether you have financial knowledge or not, you can work with a financial therapist to help. And if you feel like a therapist is not the right thing, but you do need some help, look for a certified financial planner. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.